Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Can You Hear Me podcast. I'm Rob Johnson.
And I'm Eileen Rochford. I'm the CEO of the Harbinger Group, a marketing and strategy firm. Today, we're diving into a topic that's at the heart of every successful organization: trust and transparency. They go hand in hand within our successful workplaces. What we really want to talk about, though, is why do trust and transparency matter so much? And what happens when they are missing or when they falter?
Yeah, it really is because I suppose if you're the leader of a company, you can say, well, we don't have to do it that way. And the answer is, of course, you do not have to do it that way. But the next piece of that puzzle is, could I have a better organization if I did do it that way? I think it's something people need to be a little introspective on, don't you, Eileen?
I do. The thing that I always say about this topic is, have you ever been in any relationship that felt good where you didn't trust the person you were involved with?
That's true. And who do you spend more time with than your spouse or your loved ones?
The people at work.
People you work with.
Yeah.
Right.
Not to mention that if you're not, you're never going to fire an all or have all pistons firing if you don't have a nice bedrock, frankly, of trust. And it's just the concept of trust can't be present without transparency. That's what I think people question. I think they think they can trust me. Why do I have to be fully transparent? Don't you agree?
Right. And then again, if you look at it that way and your actions are, I'm not being fully trustworthy or collaborative, how do people respond to that? And if you have any self-awareness, you can see cracks developing. You can see things that maybe you have or have not done, be responsible for some of those cracks. And then the question is, am I okay with it? Or what changes am I going to make in my behavior with this team of people to make sure that we fill those cracks in?
That's right.
So I read a Fast Company piece recently that really stuck with me. It talks about what happens when employees lose trust in their leadership. I think we all know that morale tanks, people disengage, and turnover goes through the roof. And we all know that retention is such an important factor in what companies are doing this day and age. It's like the whole foundation of the workplace starts to crack. So we're using that analogy over and over again, but it is very apt for what we're talking about here.
That's right. I think Forbes called it the trust gap, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they define that as when employees sense leaders aren't being upfront or honest. It creates an invisible barrier. I thought that was a pretty cool description. If you think about it, that's what it is. It's like when you know something's off, that is the invisible barrier that they're referencing, and people start to feel disconnected, and it makes it just so much harder to get everybody on the same page, moving in the right direction. So you just have to think about it being critically important to the success of any team, any organization, frankly, for profit or not nonprofit, doesn't matter. If you don't have it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble in a short period of time.
And not to go off into a rabbit hole or off the beaten path here, but the trust piece always starts and ends with communication, which sounds a little self-serving since we're both in this industry.
Yeah.
But it also happens to be very true, because if you, let's say, just one quick example, then we can move on. If you are being managed by somebody, if you're not the boss and somebody has a relationship with you, and you are detecting that perhaps things aren't going your way, sometimes it might be that you need, as the person who is being managed, who is reporting to that person, you need to make sure that you're communicating that message, that if there's any doubt about whether you should be trustworthy or seen as trustworthy, then you need to communicate that. And then, unfortunately, if you do that and it still doesn't get better, you've done what you needed to do. But that's why I really want to drive home the point about how communication is at the core of this idea of trustworthy, of trusting each other.
That's right. I think about periods like what we're experiencing right now. some have called this the most rapid and intensive period of change ever in the history of human beings. And change creates uncertainty. There's often fear that goes along with change. All of that is present right now for a multitude of reasons, whether it's economic fears, fears about the future of your jobs, which we're going to tackle a topic on that not too far in the future on the show, the impact of AI and how to communicate about that. All of that demands, if you're intending to keep your company moving in a positive direction, to keep people's trust, it's almost like you have to triple down on creating open communication and fostering psychological safety. That's really where it's okay for people to talk about their fears, talk about their failures, talk about what their concerns are about the future. That's what psychological safety looks like, feels like, and also focusing on how can you use communication to keep people working kind of consistently, and that hand in glove idea, like we're in this together, we're doing it together, and we're doing the right things to move us in that direction together. So I think right now
effort.
it sure does. And psychological safety is something that I don't think people really understand how you create that. That's one of the hardest things. So do you want to talk about that for a minute? Ways that leaders,
I do. And again, I know that on this program, occasionally I bring up the book that I'm writing, Over Communicate, which I'm finishing the rough draft on, which you are featured in one of the chapters, which has been referenced more than once in there about guests we've had on this program who have exhibited good communication skills. So I'm not trying to go off into this major promotional thing, other than to say the part about psychological safety, that is something I've spent a lot of time looking at recently, and it is a real thing. And when it comes out of your mouth, if you're wired differently, it might sound like soft skill. Oh God, coddling.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, and it's just not. And I think the most important thing to do, one of the things that we can convey today, Eileen, is that it's a bottom line issue. It's a profit. It's going to affect your bottom line eventually. It's not just a soft skill. It's important to have that psychological safety for the people that work in your employ, because they're going to produce more. They're going to work harder. They're going to have better attitudes. They're going to feel like they're part of something special if you, the boss, make it that way.
Yeah, for sure. So some of the ways to foster psychological safety, let's talk about some concrete examples.
Sure.
An underpinning of fostering psychological safety is normalizing failure, which is interesting, right? Especially as leaders, it's been ingrained as you kind of rise through organizations that talking about failure isn't something that you waste time on. But if you're vulnerable and willing to share that I've screwed things up, I've had major screw ups, in my experience as well. And here's an example of one of them. If you're willing to do that as a leader, people can see their failures, whether it's collective, individual, doesn't matter, as opportunities to learn and to grow. So just having frank conversations about, it's all right, we screwed this up. This isn't what we wanted to end up with at the end of the day. Let's talk about what happened and talk about what we can learn from it so that we can get out of this. That's one way to approach it. It's one that I personally use a lot. But they're not setbacks. They're, even the word failure. It's like, we didn't succeed. Why didn't we succeed? Let's be curious about that and dig into it, versus we suck, everyone's fired.
Right. Well, listen, I mean, making a mistake is not failing. Yeah. What is failing is failure to be able to articulate how we learn from the mistake. So somebody's like, I don't want to make a mistake. and then they kind of try to brush it under the rug. Or in some cases, and I love this when I'm dealing with people, especially younger professionals, who I always tell, if you don't know the answer, don't lie, don't make stuff up. Just go find out the answer and give it to people. Well, then it looks like I don't know anything. I said, you know what's worse than not knowing anything? Lying to somebody or misleading them or giving them bad information. That's worse than not knowing the answer. And I really liked what you talked about leaders just, kind of owning up to mistakes and communicating openly, even when it's uncomfortable. It's okay to have uncomfortability. It's okay to be kind to someone and say, here's the truth, as opposed to, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to let you hear what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Just the problem is organizations don't, they underestimate how quickly trust can erode if they're not careful. And if you're sitting in one of the leadership chairs, you have to be extra vigilant about it.
Absolutely. The ideas of, if you want people to trust you, you have to consistently commit to doing the activities that will help them to trust you or to trust in the purpose of your organization, the mission of the organization, the way that you're doing things as an organization. You have to commit to that. And communication is a huge piece of that. And it's the last thing that solves or your trust gap problem is shooting off an email or some kind of directive, and setting it and forgetting it. There's no way that that's going to do anything for you. You just have to have a consistent practice of sharing information and making sure that you're thoughtful about sharing the information that people need to both do their jobs effectively and to work together effectively, but to also, while they're doing that, be kind of comfortable and feel valued and that they have purpose. All those things are critically important. It's I believe, and I know that I see this in many organizations, you can foster a culture of accountability, one of the, lovely phrases that's probably 20 years old now, but still used all the time. You can do that while also supporting your people to explore new ideas, to analyze. And I think this is critically important. A practice of analysis when it comes to what did we do there? That thing that didn't go so great. We need
Yeah.
to analyze that and spend some time in it and be okay with that, strictly for the purpose of learning and growing. There's no, finger pointing involved when there's, again, air quotes, failure. It's just when things don't go your way, embrace the practice of getting your folks together, no finger pointing, no, this is so-and-so's fault. It has nothing to do with that. It's like, all right, this didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. Let's get to the bottom of it and change our processes so that next time we do this, we're going to get an awesome result instead of what happened here.
Yeah, and people need to make sure you use the word accountability. And accountability doesn't mean, oh, I'm getting yelled at, or
No.
top down. Do what I tell you. Just do it because I said to. We're not talking about either of those things here. Making people accountable, making them understand that it's okay to, if you will, make a mistake, what you were talking about earlier, and it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. People and people that I work with, people that I've interviewed for the book, whatever the case is, for them to say, I feel comfortable going to my boss. If a mistake was made, I can tell them that. That means, oh, well, look, that culture's working, as opposed to, where do I go run and hide? Because you might be able to run and hide for a short time, but they're going to find you, and then they're going to ask you the question that you may not want to answer. And if you don't have a proper answer for it, then things are going to escalate in a bad way. And there's no reason to have that happen if you have accountability, communication, and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what does that look like? To me, it looks like curiosity. Like let's be curious about what happened. Let's just kind of get inside of it to understand it better. Like that whole like bringing that curiosity every single day to what you do. Whether it's like, oh, I want to explore this exciting new idea that's going to lead to the world's greatest campaign or whatever. That's our language in our world. Um, or just curious, God, why did this get so screwed up? I can't understand it. Be curious about that. And by
Mm.
doing so, whether you're doing it as a leader, a manager, it truly doesn't matter. Demonstrating that practice, that willingness to be curious about the good and the bad, definitely fosters trust. And being transparent about it will foster trust even more. But you got to find ways to get inside the hard stuff and talk about it, be okay with that little bit of discomfort, that comes along with that without, um, playing the blame game. That's what you're going for.
And what you're also talking about, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, Eileen, is as a leader showing the vulnerability. Other people see it, and then they see, oh, that's a safe space. So I'm trying to kind of connect some of the earlier dots that we were putting out there. And I want to give one example. I just got off a call with somebody. It's a new client, and they're a terrific company, very innovative, trying to scale up, and they're owned by a big behemoth who's just so culturally there's not a great fit there. But the CEO of this company that I'm going to be working with is going to have me come and speak at do a kind of a workshop at a retreat with everybody and kind of dig into what the issues are. And so I've been meeting with various people trying to determine what are the issues? What is keeping you from going where you want to go? And one of the people that I spoke to today said, I really think, our CEO, by bringing you in, is showing great vulnerability and great self-awareness. And I was like, that's exactly right. So many people don't want to do that. So many people, their initial reaction want to be like, I got this. I got a marketing team. I got communications. I don't need any of this. And then some people are like, listen, we are working pulling in, presumably in the same direction every day. And our heads are barely above water and we're achieving the goals. We're clearing the bar barely. How do we scale up? How do we put ourselves in a position for more success? And sometimes, in this instance, I think I'm going to be very helpful to them. But it wouldn't have happened unless the leader, who somebody else said, that person's being vulnerable and self-aware. And I'm like, those are great attributes of a leader, I think.
They
Even though
are.
when they come out of your mouth, you go vulnerable. And so, I mean, I think it's a good thing, and I think it really helps kind of spur that trustworthy element that we're talking about. Also, the safe space that we feel so strongly about.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us to a nice conclusion point on this
Yeah.
discussion, which is if you're listening to this and you're here, you're not sure, do I do those things? Do I communicate enough? Do we
Right.
communicate about the right things? Do I need to be more consistent? Does it need to be more frequent? Any of those questions, if they're popping into your head, those are good signals to you that talking to an outside consultant who can see things very objectively and evaluate, oh, well, in terms of at least best practices, here's what we see that you're not doing that you should do and easily do it. You could get some great advice by seeking some outside counsel. Um, and also just take a look at how frequently, whether it's formal or informal, you are seeking input from the people, in your organization. What does that look like? The feedback that you're actually getting, that's very telling in and of itself. If it's superficial, if they're not in, say, town hall environments, very willing to offer feedback or ideas, they don't feel comfortable. Those are things you should pay attention to. Those are signals. And that is probably another signal that you could use some outside objective help, both collecting input from your folks or restructuring how you're communicating with them and what you're saying when you're communicating with them. So, just a closing thought for the day.
No, it's a really important closing thought too, because it requires when you're asking when that little voice in your head is asking you the questions you were just talking about, Eileen, and the answers, if you feel like, yes, I could do better here, no, yeah, if you're asking yourself those questions, you've already answered them for yourself, and the answer is, I can do better. I can bring in other people to help assess things because we're always on task here. So I think that's excellent advice that you gave. Well, I think that's going to do it for another edition of Can You Hear Me? I'm Rob Johnson. If you'd like to comment on this podcast or any others or suggest a topic, please reach out to us at our Can You Hear Me podcast page on LinkedIn.
And I'm Eileen Rochford. If you like what you heard, please consider giving our show, Can You Hear Me, a positive review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify, because your reviews help other listeners find our show. We appreciate that. So thanks everybody for listening. Till next time.